Tomie has actually been a pretty solid series so far. If it's been as long since you've thought about the series as it's been since I've made a video about it, let's have a quick recap. Tomie is a series about a seemingly immortal schoolgirl named Tomie, whose beauty and insatiable need to manipulate the men around her often drives them into murderous rages with her as the victim. This almost always leads to Tomie's return and subsequent vengeance against those she believes have wronged her. While this does take some absurd turns later, this is what we've experienced so far. Tomie 1998 told us about her history, that she's been alive for almost 200 years and has been killed and come back almost that entire time. Tomie Another Face was an anthology giving a taste of her life and powers, including the fact that there are now multiple Tomie who can and will work together to kill someone, and that Tomies can even grow from a single speck of ash. All of this being said, Tomie Another Face was a TV anthology special and is considered mostly non-canon to the films, but it does come in the Tomie collection if you buy it, so I included it because it did what I wanted a sequel to do. Today's video, Tomie Replay, is considered the actual true sequel to Tomie 1998. So, can it do the same thing and really get across what the deal is with Tomie? Let's check it out. We start in a hospital emergency room where a young girl is being rushed into surgery for an absurdly distended stomach, but the doctors can't determine what's causing it. They end up cutting her stomach open and revealing Tomie's eyes staring at them before it erupts out of her and announces to the room, "I am Tomie." After the opening title, a young patient and his visiting friend discuss that several patients, doctors, nurses, and even the director of the hospital have all seemingly disappeared over the last few days. It's revealed that the hospital kept Tomie's head in a basement where she grew back into her adult body in a tank of water, and she begins to make her escape and runs into Takashi, the patient Fumihito's friend, completely nude, and asks him to get her out of the hospital. He agrees, carrying her out after giving her his shirt to wear. Tomie seems mostly despondent on their way back, letting out soft giggles as he carries her, but otherwise doesn't speak or react to anything. Once they get to Takashi's apartment though, Tomie becomes playful, tossing his shirt at his head to blind him while she changes into a sweater, and even gives him a kiss before he realizes that Tomie's left arm isn't fully developed. Tomie becomes withdrawn and seemingly scared, asking Takashi if he's going to kill her. How is he going to do it, and what is he going to do with her afterward? After she begins shaking and panicking, Takashi's response to this is to slap the crap out of her, and she crumples into the floor, asking him not to kill her. We smash cut to a young girl, Yumi, reporting her father, the director of the hospital, as a missing person. The police, however, seem disinterested, commenting on her problematic home life and his difficult marriage as things to take care of, and maybe he'll come back on his own. Not to be discouraged, Yumi visits the hospital directly, where she witnesses a very unusual confrontation between a patient, also looking for the director, and a very nervous doctor. She puts that aside though and confronts a nurse that was having an affair with her father, but the nurse says that she's been just as worried about him. She informs Yumi that they had ended their affair, but that she still loves him. From there, however, we jump to the doctor and patient from the lobby. The patient was actually the mother of the young girl from the opening, and the doctor very creepily informs her that her daughter is alive, and that's all that she should be grateful for. As he leaves, he passes Yumi in the hallway and gives her a package for her father, saying he doesn't need it anymore. He then goes to the roof to take a long walk with a sudden stop and lands directly in front of Yumi. Fumihito has been trying to get a hold of Takashi for over a day though, and finally gets him on the phone, when Takashi tells him that he rescued Tomie from the hospital, but he can't tell anyone about her. He then begins to stab at Fumihito about trying to steal Tomie from him before hanging up on him. In Takashi's apartment, Tomie takes umbrage with the declaration of being Takashi's, and declares that she's already grown bored with him, and wants him to disappear before telling him to call Fumihito back, because she wants to meet him. As a quick aside, this Tomie is played by Mai Hosho, who is not the lady who played her in the first movie, but the disaffected and callous way she speaks and treats people that she's tired of, contrasted with the way that she can be bubbly and flirty or scared and withdrawn, is absolutely incredible, and she is definitely crushing the role to the degree where people with a raw wound from a bad relationship may find it poking a soft area. I absolutely adore it. Someone who doesn't adore it though is Takashi, who instead takes the phone and proceeds to bash her head in with a pretty hilarious expression, but To his credit, it's definitely uncomfortable to look at. We rejoin Yumi, who's reading her father's journal that was in the package that the doctor gave her. He keeps notes on how during the surgery he had cut his left thumb and has been having trouble with it since then. A little later, he claims that he no longer has control of his left arm at all. Days later, his entries are written in blood, saying that he's no longer himself and quote-unquote she needs to be killed, and repeatedly calls her a monster. Yumi closes it and goes to sleep. Yumi's mother goes to visit the hospital and visits the nurse who is nailing her husband about Yumi's visit. The nurse wants to try to explain herself to Yumi, and weirdly her mother encourages it, claiming that she knew about the affair, but it wasn't the problem between them. She just couldn't put her career aside and be a housewife. Yumi's friends pressure her to a party she doesn't fit into, and she runs across Fumihito, who has left the hospital and is looking for Tomie and Takashi there. They meet up and discuss what they know, but it turns out to be a whole bunch of nothing. They seem to get along, but Fumihito's illness strikes and he doubles over, prompting Yumi to ask if he was really let go from the hospital, but he deflects the question. Yumi then takes him to her house to show him her father's journal and see what he can get from it. He reads the blood entries further and learns that the director and another doctor were infected, slowly being taken over by Tomie, but unsure what to do, or even what they could do about it. As Yumi and Fumihito part ways and go to bed, we join Takashi burying Tomie's corpse in the woods, and returning home to find her headless body standing on the balcony. She turns to look at him, and her head slowly begins to emerge from the open wound on her neck. When we join the two the next morning going to visit Takashi, they find his still disheveled apartment, and upon going further in, see Tomie's clothes on a hanger before they fall to the floor, and are dragged into the closet by a clearly disturbed Takashi, who simply proclaims "monster" over and over. As Yumi and Fumihito deal with that, they both remain oblivious to Tomie, clinging to the ceiling above them, looking pissed. Fumihito says that he'll try to see Takashi in the hospital and get some information out of him, and Yumi tells him to contact her once he's done. That night at Yumi's home, she hears her father return, but he snaps at her not to come near him, and asks who she thinks he is before explaining that Tomie is a monster that just hunts for men as she wanders Japan, and the only way to fix it is to kill her, over and over. This is interspersed with another Tomie digging up and seeming to mock the buried one, telling her severed head that she's the winner, and mocking Yumi's crying when she was afraid of her father. Her attitude quickly changes though when severed Tomie says that Yumi called her a monster. She gets serious and a little angry as she douses the head in liquid, and comments that she doesn't like girls like her, before setting it ablaze. The next day, Yumi goes by herself to visit the young girl who's operated on at the beginning of the movie, and meets her father, who explains that she had needed a kidney transplant, but ended up having pain soon after. The dad found out that the donor was Tomie, and upon researching her finds out her terrible history. He says that a retired policeman told him all about her, which makes me think it was the detective from the 1998 movie who was obsessed with meeting Tomie and never got to. That night, Fumihito visits Yumi, who says that they should just abandon this before it destroys them. But Fumihito is concerned with someone he hit with his car earlier, and before he can say anything more, Yumi goes to investigate a noise outside, but it's just a delivery person. Fumihito then seems to lose control of himself and runs outside, pushing Yumi down a stairway, but he tries to save her before losing control again and letting go. As Yumi lays at the bottom of the stairs, Tomie arrives to laugh at her. We then cut to Fumihito in his car, missing his windshield, being ordered by Tomie to drive faster down the road as she hangs out the window, laughing wildly with a large scar covering her left eye. Back at the hospital, the director's body is discovered in the glass case that Tomie had been kept in. They find video of the head they removed from the little girl slowly rebuilding its body in the container. Meanwhile, Yumi's mom and the nurse he was cheating with seemingly bond over missing him, which is, I don't know why this plotline is here or what I'm supposed to take from it. Back in the story where important things are happening, Tomie sends a letter to Yumi, mocking her for her loss of both her dad and Fumihito, before calling her to the hospital for a final showdown. Yumi does go to confront her and is mostly taunted and laughed at by Tomie as Yumi makes her way after her. After finally confronting her in the basement, Tomie mocks Yumi and all of humanity for loving and trusting people, only to be betrayed all the time. She tells Yumi that her dad had always looked at Tomie with dirty eyes when she was reforming, that he had just been like all the others. Yumi tries to flee and Fumihito appears to help her before Tomie commands him to kill her. Unwilling to do so, he instead drives an axe into his own leg. Tomie begins to take Yumi down the hall, commenting on her unfortunate fate of being betrayed constantly, always being hurt by people. She tells Yumi to leave them all and come with her instead. Yumi decides instead to call her a monster to her face, which deeply angers Tomie. Her cold facade crumbles as she speaks in anger and pushes Yumi down the hall. who continues to proclaim that she still loves and trusts the people who may have hurt her, but she'll never trust Tomie. Tomie's beauty begins to fall apart, her old wounds from previous deaths appearing as she explains that her existence is solely people saying that they love her before they betray and kill her. She then declares that she will show Yumi the girl who can't die, before showing Yumi a young girl trapped in a cage begging for death, but Yumi refuses to do it. Fumihito, however, proceeds to recover and chop Tomie's head off and set her body on fire, snapping Yumi back to reality. Yumi then takes Tomie's severed laughing head and throws it into the fire as well. The flames rage as Tomie's last words carry out, "I won't forgive you," and she goes laughing to the grave. Yumi and Fumihito walk outside into the rain, and we go to credits. So, does Replay do what Another Face did when it comes to establishing Tomie? I actually think it does. It's exactly what I wanted, like, Another Face was, and it hits all the important notes. Tomie can regenerate from serious wounds. Check. Tomie is a kind of spirit of vengeance, destroying everyone who wrongs her. Check. Multiple Tomies can exist and interact with one another, though here it seems a little more adversarial than Another Face, as she mocks and then kills the murdered Tomie she dug up, whereas in Another Face they work together to kill someone and even happily took a photo together. While I don't think it's as good as Another Face, there's a lot of downtime where not much happens, and the weird subplot with the nurse and Yumi's mom definitely rubbed me the wrong way, but it doesn't make the movie bad at all, just worse than it could have been had it been a little bit tighter. It's still a recommended for me. The main characters are good and the story is interesting when it stays on topic. And of course, Tomie herself absolutely crushed her role. If you get a chance, I definitely recommend it as we begin to enter the weirder parts of Tomie with Rebirth. I'm going to be honest with y'all, it felt really good to work on a video again. I can't wait to do it some more. I love you all. Good night.